What's up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to Philly with John Marks on PHLY. As always, presented by Bet Parks. Get over there to the Bet Parks app and take a look at some of the playoff odds in MLB. We'll get into that. A lot to talk about. Playoffs are set. We know who the Phillies could be possibly playing, all that jazz. That's coming up here in a second. Les Bowen's going to join us later on in the show, contributor to PHLY, 8:40. He is, we have a lot to talk about with the Eagles, which we'll get to. He also covered the Pete Rose gambling investigation when when it was announced that Pete was suspended for life by baseball, and he admitted to the gambling charges. So Les was covering that for the Daily News. So I'll at least give one question with Les because I find it fascinating to have covered that story. But yeah, like it came down. Was it last night, I guess? I'm not even really sure. Slightly after dinner, maybe. But I just remember seeing it. TMZ tweeted it out, and I happened to go on Twitter and see Pete Rose died. Wow. Dikembe Mutombo passed away. We learned about that live on Anthony's show. He was at 76ers Media Day, and that was really, really, really sad. I want to actually get this out of the way to start so we don't miss it. Mutombo was one of those once-in-a-lifetime, bigger-than-life players. I think the lasting memories that you have of Dikembe are him in the 1994 sweep where they pulled the biggest upset in really considered NBA history at that point, where he's gripping the ball on the ground, laying on his back after the Nuggets win. And then, of course, the finger wag, which we saw here in Philadelphia in 2001, after Billy King and Larry Brown made the trade to get him here and the run to the finals. Now, truth be told, I wasn't exactly a huge Mutombo fan, and he was very good that year. But an amazing player, amazing person. I met him. He's exactly what you would think he would be. Big smile, obviously larger than life with his size, but Dikembe Mutombo will be missed. I had forgotten that he had brain cancer. When I saw that he passed away, I'm like, oh, that's right. They announced a couple years ago he had brain cancer. So typically, once that happens, it's a matter of time. So about 2 years after the fact. So Dikembe Mutombo passing away at the age of 58. But Pete Rose, it came down last night, and got to tell you the emotions that went through me. And I guess it really depends on how old you are and what baseball means to you for how you feel or what you think about Pete Rose. So my first memory in life, and this is absolutely the truth, my first memory in life was the Phillies winning the World Series in 1980. My first memory in life. And then as a Phillies fan, growing up watching the Phillies all the time, when there was a rain delay, well, you go to let's go to the tape, and you're watching the 1980 World Series, and the Bob Boone bobble into Pete Rose catch is an iconic play in Philadelphia sports history. Do we have it, Tyler Zulli? This is the clinching Game 6, 1980 World Series. There was one out in the ninth inning, and this is how it looked right here. Here it is. I'll never forget the bounce on the AstroTurf after he caught it. And Pete Rose saved the day. And as a 4-year-old, being a Philly fan, Pete Rose, Mike Schmidt, iconic. That's who you wanted to be. That's as a young baseball player, 4 years old, 5 years old, learning the game. Play like Pete Rose. Play like Mike Schmidt. Pete Rose is a legend in this city to this day. He helped a franchise that had never won a World Series win a World Series. And I don't know if a lot of people know this. When he signed with the Phillies as a free agent, he was 38 years old. This wasn't a young fella. I had his baseball reference up earlier. He wasn't a young fella or even 30 or even 35. He was freaking 38 years old when he came to Philadelphia in 1979. They had a disappointing 1979. They win the World Series in 1980, strike short in 1981, 82, 83, and he was going after the 83 season at age 42. But some of the things he did as a 38-year-old, he batted .331, led the league in on-base percentage, batted .325 in 1981, had 3 hits in that game. That World Series Game 6 had 3 hits in that game. Just Charlie Hustle. That's all you need to say. Pete Rose is an iconic baseball player, and we were lucky enough to have him here in Philly, and he's a Philadelphia legend. But the other thing that comes with Pete Rose is the other stuff, the gambling. Bad guy, like an all-time bad guy. Anthony was in here a couple minutes right before we went on the air, and we were talking about it. And Ant's a little bit older than me, but as kids, you want to be Pete Rose. But then when you become an adult and you learn more about him, it's like, wow, really bad guy, degenerate gambler. The underage thing with the girl that was out there, tax evasion. He did prison time. He remained a degenerate gambler. The whole gambling on baseball and the indefinite suspension or the lifetime ban, which he always denied. Even though he admitted it in 1989 and he said, yes, I did it. He said, well, I didn't do it. I just said, I'll be back. And he never came back because he never admitted it until a book in 2004, I think, where he profited off the book. He came out and he said, yeah, well, all right, I gambled, but I was betting for my team. I was only betting on my team. That's the only so that's why it's okay. Baseball's Rule 21, posted in every professional clubhouse, says that any player, umpire, club, league official, or employee who shall bet any sum whatsoever upon any baseball game, a connection with which the bettor has a duty to perform shall be declared permanently ineligible. That's what Pete Rose did as the manager of the Cincinnati Reds. Who knows if he bet as a player? But it's a lifetime ban. And he had an opportunity, if he would have acted the right way, if he would have said, hey, listen, I did it. I'm a degenerate gambler. I'm sorry. I think he'd be in the Hall of Fame. Unfortunately for Pete, he's not. And he has no one to blame but himself for not being in the Hall of Fame. Jason Stark wrote this. He tweeted this out. Pete Rose was the most mesmerizing baseball figure I ever covered. Just as we couldn't stop watching him when he played, we couldn't stop talking about him all these years since. It saddens me that he never had his Hall of Fame induction day, but so much of that is on him. He had chances to change his story. He just never took the road to make that happen. So RIP to the Hit King. Thanks for fun. Thanks for the fun of watching you play. I'll never forget the memories you left us. And I think that's the perfect way to describe Pete. It does. It's sad. Like when we talk about a range of emotions when someone passes, and for me, it's Pete Rose was my first memory in life, right? Like being a Philly, that Phillies team. And it takes you through being a big baseball fan, being a big Phillies fan as a kid, and then watching him since then. And I had a chance to meet Pete. I had a chance to do some media with Pete years ago. This is during Talking Baseball with Dutch days. During their run, it's probably like 2010, 2011. Pete did stuff with 97.5 The Fanatic. He came on with Mike Miss a couple times. He came in studio with Mike Miss a couple times. And we did they called it like Dinner with a Legend or something like that. We were at the Braza Brazilian Steakhouse in Horsham, and I don't know how many seats were available. However many seats were available, they were gone in a second. And it was a great dinner, and Pete spoke before, during, and after. And when I tell you there's not a more engaging baseball person out there, there's not a more engaging baseball person out there. This guy remembers pretty much every at-bat. He can talk you through the counts of at-bats that he was in. He loved talking baseball. You can tell that baseball meant more to him than probably anything else. And through his own actions and his own arrogance, he was never able to be inducted in the Hall of Fame. And I know that killed him. And I don't think he gets inducted. I don't think he ever gets inducted. So honestly, I don't think he deserves it. And that's maybe a discussion for another day. I have my feelings about Pete in the Hall of Fame. You can't be a manager and bet baseball. There's one thing you can't do is you can't bet, even if you're betting for your own team. And Pete, if you go through the Dowd report, and we'll bring in Tyler Zuley for this part of it, the Dowd report was John Dowd who did the investigation for baseball into his gambling. And I remember I read the entire thing on the internet. I remember where I was. I was living in West Philly. It was a Friday night. And that's how much of a loser I was. I don't know how I got on the subject, but I Googled the Dowd report and I read it. And man, does it take you inside of a bad guy and a degenerate gambler. He had different bookies he was betting with. He had different middlemen that he was betting with. He was betting big money on games. So if you read that and you know how gambling works and you know how sports work, if you're 50 grand down and you're betting on your team to win and you're winning 2-1 in the 7th inning and you need to bring in a reliever, are you bringing in a guy that is rested but isn't all that great? Are you bringing in a guy for the 3rd straight outing that probably shouldn't pitch, but he's your best reliever? Of course, it's going to change the way that you manage a game. Of course, it jeopardizes the integrity of the game. Can't do it. And he would have been okay if he just would have handled it correctly, but he denied it until, I'm going to make money on this book. Okay, well, yeah, I did it, but I didn't really do it. It was only for betting on my team. So Pete Rose died yesterday. I don't want to dwell too much on the negative, but Tyler, I think it's impossible not to mention all that stuff when talking about Pete Rose, because that's a big part of his legacy. You know, like, great player, play like him on the field, don't act like him off of the field.
When I saw this news broke yesterday, I really struggled with what, because I knew we were going to talk about it. I really struggled with what I was going to say yesterday. I woke up this morning feeling the same way, like really struggling with what I was going to say. And not because of any defense of Pete Rose. Pete Rose's actions off the field are indefensible. Yeah. I think he is a bad human being, and I want to make that very clear right away. I have no good, positive words to say about Pete Rose, the human being. What I struggled with today and yesterday, and even like right now as I'm trying to kind of formulate my thoughts, is kind of breaking down. There are human beings that are grieving from this, and what I mean by that is there are someone somewhere, his child, his grandchild, a family member, a friend, is grieving over the loss of someone that they care about. So to belittle, to hit home on a point that I do not have kind words to say about this man, knowing that someone somewhere is grieving over this loss, is tough for me to parse. I do not have any kind words to say about Pete Rose, but I do understand that someone is grieving this loss. And so I probably have 1,000 words that I could say as to why Pete Rose was a bad human being, was somebody that I did not, I think morally, I don't agree on anything that he did outside of the game of baseball. But I also understand the construct of like human nature and human grieving. And so for me, what I really struggled with today was, how much do you attack a guy knowing that someone is struggling with his loss somewhere?
Yeah, I think it's okay to say, like, yeah, he was a major POS, but he was also a great baseball player. And knowing all the other things, like, you know that. I think there's a lot of people out there that are doing exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, and somebody brought up the piece of like separating the art from the artist, the same thing for separating the human from the player. It's an increasingly difficult thing to do when I'm not asking. It's kind of like when Charles Barkley said, "I'm not a role model." I'm not asking anyone in this, a professional athlete, to be a role model, to be an upstanding member of society. You brought up Dikembe Mutombo's passing as well. And Dikembe Mutombo, from all accounts, was an incredibly humble, gracious, humanitarian person. A really good man above all else, right? Yes. Did a ton to grow the game of basketball in Africa, did a ton to just in his humanitarian efforts. I'm not even asking you to be that, but when the bar is set at don't be a bad person and you can't get to that bar, that's where it becomes a problem. And so the words that I want to say, that I feel in my heart about Pete Rose, I probably will hold for another time, because there are family and friends of his that I'm sure are grieving today, that it's not their fault that he was a bad human being. And so I'm really like having a difficult time parsing through the words that I want to say. because I don't have those fond memories that you do. I just have memories of an off the field guy who made a lot of really questionable decisions.
Well, I mean, I think when the most recent example is OJ. I know OJ Simpson as a guy that did NBC pregame, and I don't remember him as a player. I'm not old enough to remember him as a player, but OJ was still larger than life. He was bigger than life. He was one of the biggest stars on the planet. He was doing acting and things like that. And then when the whole thing went down and he killed Ron Goldman and his wife, he remained one of the biggest figures on the planet. So when he passes away, I know a lot of people want to say, oh, well, don't dance on his grave, or like that's a part of his story. So of course, like, do you try to find a way to be respectful because he passed away and he has family? I mean, I guess, but he also killed 2 people, right? So when Bill Cosby, for example, when Bill Cosby passes away, Bill Cosby, when I was a kid, Bill Cosby was like the biggest thing ever. The Cosby Show, picture pages, Jell-O pudding, everything. When he passes, you think differently of him when all this stuff comes out about him. So when he passes, it's not going to be the same great story of Bill Cosby. This stuff changes things, just like with Pete Rose. And when Bill Cosby passes, that's going to be a big part of drugging women and the jail time and everything else that came from it.
So right. So my point being is, I understand that I'm kind of like straddling a fence here that I shouldn't, because like I said, I have 1,000,001 thoughts about the human being that I probably would have shared prior to the knowledge of his death today. And I will at some point probably share again, because I just genuinely do not believe that there is like the unsympathetic nature of Pete Rose throughout his career and throughout his life about every wrongdoing that he did.
Yeah.
It really grates on you, because there were not just like morality things, there were legal things that, are really bad. And again, that's where I'm sitting here just saying today, I'm kind of holding my tongue just a little bit to allow those in his life that were not him to grieve, I guess, in a way. Like, that's all I'm trying to do, is look out for his family and his family members, basically, is really what I'm trying to get at.
They'll be all right. But like, listen, it's a real discussion I think a lot of people are having today. Before we get to your update here, let's play this and then we'll wrap up the Pete Rose thing. This was 1980 NLCS against the Houston Astros, long considered by many people as being one of the best LCSs ever. And these were only 5 games back then. But this is typical Pete Rose. Greg Luzinski hits a double. You'll see it. And Pete's out by a mile, but Bruce Bochy is at the plate. He's the catcher for the Astros. Here it is, Tyler, if we have it. This is 1980 World Series.
Hit down the field line toward the corner. It's bouncing off the wall. Fielded by Cruz. Here comes Rose around third. It'll take a perfect play. The throw to the plate. Gets away from Bochy. Rose scored. The ball was there in time. The catcher couldn't come.
Oh, and the replay is awesome. He goes right after his head. He should have been out by a mile. You know who's on the call there? Tyler Zulli. The first one was Joe Garagiola from the World Series. You know who's on the call? An iconic college football play-by-play guy who used to do ABC baseball back then. Howard Cosell was actually Howard Cosell was in that booth as well. If you continue listening to the clip, Howard Cosell was a part of ABC. They used to have Monday Night Baseball, not during football season, because baseball was much bigger back then. That is Nelly Keith Jackson on the call. The NLCS 1980 Phillies and Astros. Yup, Keith Jackson on the call right there. Al Michaels used to do baseball too back in the day. But that's Pete Rose flying around third base, no helmet on, and he's out by a mile. Bruce Bochy, he knows Pete's coming. I mean, Pete ran over Bud Harrelson in a friggin' All-Star game. You think he cares about it's an All-Star game? And he brawled with Bud Harrelson. So like that right there is Pete. And that's why I love Pete. It's easier, Tyler. It's easier for me to separate the stuff because I have those memories. Because he was the only thing I knew about from baseball when I was a kid which was amazing. All right, well, let's get to what happened last night before we move on to some Eagles. Les Bowen's going to join us in about 20 minutes here. But, well, actually, you know what? I should probably, before we go to that, I should probably do some talking here. And we should talk about Glatt hair restoration. All right? And, like, listen, I don't even know if I need to say anything other than this right here. You know, I'm not normally somebody that likes to brag, but, like, come on, man. Look at that. I had hair restoration with Dr. Glatt. How's the hair looking today? Instead of styling my hair differently or getting my hair cut differently, which I was doing. Now I leave the razor bar when I get my hair cut, and I'm feeling great and I'm looking great. And that's because of Glatt hair restoration. Really, like when you're looking for something that's, like this is a significant thing that you're doing, you want to go to the place that has the most experience and the most success, right? You don't want to see like, oh, well, let me try this place out. Nope. Most experience, most success. Glatt hair restoration. Now part of the Morgenstern Center under the direction of renowned plastic surgeon Dr. Ken Morgenstern. The approach is amazing. You're getting the biggest experts, the best experts. Each member of their hair team has over 30 years of experience. That's all they do is hair. And you see it with the results. You do. You see it with the results. A lot of people like to restore cars. A lot of people like to restore furniture. That's what you're doing with your hair. You're getting your hair back. You're not sewing hair into your scalp. This is a simple medical procedure, and they're the best at doing it where you get your hair back. That's really as simple as it is. So if you thought about this and you heard me talking about it before, just free consultation, one-on-one. They'll answer the questions and question the answers. Give them a call today, 610-980-4000. Their website is glatthairmctr.com, glatthairmctr.com. Best in the business. You can always reach out to me individually on my socials or on email with any questions that you have. I documented the process, everything with photos. So I can send you photos of what you'll look like the day after, the week after, my before and after. Everything else, I'm here for you. I can hand you right off to Dr. Glatt and the hair restoration people. 610-980-4000 or glatthairmctr.com. How about that? glatthairmctr.com. All right, another thing I need help with. I'm clueless. Actually, I impressed myself over the weekend. I actually diagnosed the problem with my refrigerator outside. I Googled it, and I was able to not fix it because there wasn't really broken, but like I took care of it by myself. But that's about all I can do. A minor thing. Maybe you can't even do that, right? And that's why you got to get with our great people at Ace. All right, because if you're having a problem at home, whether it's heating, air conditioning, plumbing, electrical, whatever it is, a wide range of residential maintenance, acehardwarehomeservices.com. That's where you got to go. Because the power of the Ace brand and the great people at Ace Hardware, well, they have something for you, all right? If you have anything that's going wrong, right, they're bringing helpful home with just people from your area. The power of the Ace brand, a wide range of residential maintenance, installation, and home repair services that are available for you. Free estimates on equipment installation, replacement, with trusted advisors and options that are best suited for your home. And if you have something that goes wrong on the weekend or after hours, emergency services. We've all been there, right? Emergency services are available when you need us the most. And here's why I love Ace Hardware Home Services. You can trust them. So if you don't have somebody that can do electrical, if you're like, hey, we don't really have a good plumber, they have somebody for you. Right? They'll make it right no matter what. You can trust them. Service and satisfaction's guaranteed. acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project. Check them out. acehardwarehomeservices.com. All right, Tyler, a lot was going on. Let me just say this, and I know you're going to talk about it. Man, that was a hell of a first game, Mets and Braves yesterday, man. That was, even the second game was pretty intriguing, but that was some good baseball yesterday. Tyler Zudley with the update. What do you got?
Yeah, sure was a pretty good baseball game yesterday. And it was funny, too, because if you sat and watched the first, 5+ innings of that game, it was an average baseball game, right? Spencer Schwellenbach was pitching well. The Mets were a little bit dormant offensively in this one. If you turned it off after the 7th, I wouldn't have blamed you. It was 3-0 Braves. But all of a sudden, leadoff double for the Mets sparks a 10-batter 8th inning. The Mets send 10 guys to the plate. They score 6 times. The Braves respond with 4 more in the bottom of the 8th to retake the lead at 7-6. And just when you think it's just about to be done, and looks like maybe the Braves finally will take Game 1 and clinch their playoff spot, a man who's gotten MVP consideration. Now, granted, Shohei Ohtani is going to win the MVP this year, but a man who's gotten MVP consideration for the way that he has elevated his baseball team this year did what an MVP was supposed to do. This is Francisco Lindor in the bottom of the 8th, and this comes via Mets radio. I'll give you the call letters in just a second because they'll be up on the screen for you. But this comes via Mets radio, and our friend Nick Pacone puts all these calls together, on his Twitter account. So this was the Francisco Lindor epic home run, and a great call by Howie Rose along the way.
Johnson ready. His first pitch to Lindor. Swinging a high fly ball, well hit right center. Harris going back. It's on the way. It is gone. Into the Braves bullpen in right center field. Francisco Lindor has an MVP moment. Whether he wins one or not, he has just put the Mets back on top. 8-7, a 2-run home run, his 33rd of the year. He's not only hugged by Marte lifts Lindor off of his...
So Lindor hits that go-ahead home run. Mets take the lead 8-7, and that is how they win the game. 2-run home run in the top of the 9th to win the game.
Yeah, Lindor, the start to his Mets career was a disaster, and it kind of looked like it's like, uh-oh. When guys get swallowed up in big media markets and they're getting booed, a lot of times they don't make it out of that. This dude did, and he's been fantastic. Of all the teams that I don't want to face, the Mets are probably at the top of that list. Like the Braves won the second game, so they're in as well. But the Mets are hot right now, and like Mets are playing with house money. And we've seen in the last 2 years the Diamondbacks surged late and they got in. The year before, the Phillies were hot late. The Mets feel like the Diamondbacks of last year and the Phillies of 2 years ago. And I hate to say that because I hate the Mets, but they're dangerous right now.
It's kind of funny you say that because I think there might be a handful of teams that feel that way to different degrees, because I think talent level eventually is going to reside where it should. The Mets feel that way. San Diego, we've talked about plenty, has played playoff baseball for like a month now. And maybe the biggest surprise of the postseason. Now, they may, again, maybe talent level gets, they end up getting bounced. But the Detroit Tigers have, they were a 0.8% chance to make the playoffs when the month of September started. They had an insane month backed by their Triple Crown, soon-to-be Cy Young winner, Tarek Skubal. Talk about a couple of teams getting hot at the right time.
Yeah, and they weren't they were sellers at the trade deadline.
Yeah,
they sold a good starting pitcher.
They probably would like Jack Flaherty back about now. So the wild card round has officially been set. As you said, the Mets get in with the Game 1 win. They'll head to Milwaukee today. The Braves get in with their Game 2 win. They'll go to San Diego. Playoffs begin today at 2:32 because, of course, it does. TV time. The Tigers, as we mentioned, will head to Houston to take on the Astros. 4 o'clock, it's the Royals and the Orioles. 5:30, it is the Mets and the Brewers. And the late night game, 8:38, is the Braves and the San Diego Padres. Got a lot of fun baseball ahead of us. Yeah,
it's set up to be a really good opening round.
Sure is. I'm
looking forward to all the series. I agree with you with the Padres. They're dangerous. If the Phillies get the Brewers, I feel pretty good about that series. Like the Dodgers, they might have the best record in baseball. Are they set up to win series in the playoffs with their starting pitcher?
Yeah, their pitching's a little bit ravaged right now. I know that Yoshinobu Yamamoto is back. I believe Jack Flaherty is scheduled to start Game 1 for them. They've lost a ton of arms throughout the year. Tyler Glasnow's been banged up for most of the year. We've talked about this. Like the Dodgers, their medical staff probably needs to be
it's got to be something going on with system-wide in the minor. I don't know what's going on. Too many shoulder injuries to be happening that this isn't something.
So one final note before we move on. Mark Bowen, who is the Braves beat writer for MLB.com, tweets this out a couple hours ago. Ian Anderson, A.J. Smith-Shawver, and Bryce Elder are the top candidates to start Game 1 of the wild card round against the Padres because, John, the news that we got just after the Mets made the playoffs was Chris Sale was scratched from his start due to back spasms and back tightness. And it turns out he's not going to make the NL wild card at all. So they're a little bit thin at pitching as well because they had to use.
Is he not going to be on the roster?
So they haven't announced officially if he's not going to be on the roster, but I would imagine they might be leaning.
Well, the fact that he couldn't pitch in a win and in situation,
it's got to be worse than just back spasms.
He's certainly not close to pitching because right afterwards they said, oh, well, he still could pitch in the wild card round.
Right.
And then immediately they're like, yeah, he's not pitching in the wild card round. So this is something that's going to take longer than 5 days.
Sure.
And
having to play today is difficult for them, right?
Yeah.
So you think about they used Max Fried and Reynaldo Lopez a couple days ago. They had to pitch to get to this point. Game 1, they threw Spencer Schwellenbach, so he's probably not available at least until Game 3. You're talking, like we said, like Mark Bowman said, Anderson, Smith-Shawver, Bryce Elder. Fried probably goes. Maybe Charlie Morton or Fried goes Game 2. But your backs are kind of up against the wall here if you're the Braves.
Sometimes teams spit their wad just to get into the playoffs, and they're limping in the playoffs. And without Sale, they have some good starting pitching. Don't get me wrong; they're still a good team, but I don't see them winning that series.
Yeah, I mean, and we get a comment here that Sale's velocity had dipped pretty significantly.
3 miles an hour.
3 miles an hour. I mean,
over 3 miles an hour.
Because I initially and sometimes your gut reaction is maybe a little bit over dramatic and sometimes even rude. But when I found out that he was scratched from yesterday's start, my initial thought, I think a lot of people had this initial thought was, dude, it's win or go home.
Right. How are you not out there?
You got to go out and try to shove for a couple innings. And then if you get out there and you get an inning in a third and you go, man, I can't bend over. I'm not releasing right. You at least go, hey, I tried. I gave it my best. I'm not well. To now know what we know, that he's probably going to miss the wild card.
At least.
It's significant. It's not, he's not hurt, right? He doesn't have the difference between hurt and injured. He's much closer to injured, clearly, than hurt at this point.
Yeah, I agree.
Which sucks for them. Is probably good for the Padres and anybody that doesn't like the Braves, like most Phillies fans
like
don't.
Me, yeah. Sorry, Braves fans.
But there's almost a sense of I almost feel bad for Braves fans because their team's been the walking wounded this year.
The Cy Young favorite's been out for the season. The Cy Young is going to be out for the playoffs. And by the way,
your
Phillies
MVP
fans,
candidate has been out since May.
Yeah, yep. Yes, sorry, Phillies fans. I know that everybody now wants to make Zach Wheeler the Cy Young winner because of Sale not pitching. That's not going to happen. Their numbers are similar.
No, he's going to win the Triple Crown. He's winning the Cy Young.
Zach Wheeler's had a fantastic season. Chris Sale is still winning the Cy Young. So if you want to argue that, then argue that. I'm not going to do that for you. Monday Night Football last night. My takeaways are the Lions are legit, and they're much better than the Eagles. And Tyreek Hill is going to freak out in Miami because they don't even have a quarter of a quarterback, much less half of a quarterback. I don't know how you go into the season with Tua as your quarterback and not have a better backup plan, but they don't have a better backup plan. Huntley was playing last night because he's better than Boyle. Who was better? Who else was out there before Boyle?
Skylar Thompson.
Skylar Thompson got hurt, so that's why he's not eligible to play. Yeah, the Dolphins are in big trouble. And the last thing you want to do is rush Tua back. At this point, it feels like the season's over. So, he can't come off of IR until after, week 6 or something like that. But Tyreek Hill was mad as all bleep last night on that sideline. And listen, he's on my fantasy football team, so I'm not happy either. Even though I'm 4-0, just saying. 4-0.
Are you? I lost my first game this week. I'm now 3-1.
Listen, and that's with Kyle Pitts having, I need a tight end. Kyle Pitts with no points, but when
everybody needs a tight end. No tight ends are playing well in fantasy this year.
That's it. It's the NFL has turned into a really weird league with points and touchdowns and passing yards. There's never been more field goals and rushing yards than in rushes in recent memory, because defenses have made adjustments. All right, and our headlines every day are also sponsored by Dr. Glatt Hair Restoration. You heard us talk about him before. But again, all I got to say, look at that. It looks pretty good. I'm not blessed with a great hairline like the Cuz was in here earlier. Great hairline. He doesn't need Glatt Hair Restoration. All right, Les is going to join us coming up here in a second to talk about some Eagles situations. Hopefully Les is going to join us here in a second. But just real fast on the baseball stuff before we segue into some Eagle stuff here. I definitely want to avoid the Mets, and I do not like the look of the Mets right now. There is just something about the way that they're playing in a short series. And again, this is something that we took great joy in the last couple of years of, oh, look at the Braves. They're having simulated games. They're afraid of what's going to happen because they haven't played in a week and they clinched and they really haven't had a competitive game for 2 weeks. And look at the Phillies. That's a real thing. So now we're that team. We don't have the history of it happening the previous year, so it's not in their head yet. But there's something to the Mets, and you saw it yesterday. The Mets until not even the last day of the year, the day after the last game of the year, where they had to play a doubleheader, they had to come back in late innings to win a game to get into the playoffs. Now, without any rest, they go right to Milwaukee, and now they got to win a series up there. If they do that, now maybe they'll be out of gas because it'll be like it's a really crazy schedule to go from, the playoffs literally less than 24 hours starting after you finish your last game. But that's not the type of team you want to face. So hopefully the Brewers take care of them, and then I'll feel much better about the series.
Yeah, I mean, they've been playing playoff baseball for a month now, right? Like you look at the numbers. They're granted, how long can this pitching staff be as good as they've been? But Luis Severino has pitched above his head.
At least.
Jose Quintana has been unbelievable in the last month or so. David Peterson did a really nice job against the Phillies the one time out, and he's pitched pretty well over his last 10 starts or so.
Sure
who am I missing? Regardless, even those three.
That's all. I mean, that's all they really need.
And they've got a team who doesn't. They don't roll over. Like, they don't give up. They. Lindor and Alonso and Nimmo and like they've got a bunch of hate to face dudes.
They're
especially
really annoying.
Nimmo.
You took the words out of my mouth.
But they're
really
just a
annoying.
scrappy, competitive, and by the way, talented team. Like, I know the Mets are going to Met, but like they've been really good since the London series. If you want to date it back to the Grimace stuff, go ahead. But there's parallel between the time Grimace debuted and the time they started playing good. I'm not saying it's the correlation. But there's parallel in the time frames.
They have something that they've rallied around.
Sure,
they have. There is something special that's going on with that team. And ultimately, if you don't have enough talent or you kind of run out of gas, that happens. But this can take you a series or two, if not more.
Oh, I think they're beating Milwaukee. I really do.
I do too. Yeah, I do too. No, I'm not. Positive John.
Well,
haven't I been positive the last couple of weeks? Positive John.
I think that's separate from you being positive John about the Phillies, right? Like, you can sit here and objectively say the Mets have played some really good baseball.
It all comes back to how I feel about the Phillies series.
Well, you're not going to worry about it because you can worry about it, of course, but you're not going to worry about it entirely until you find out who wins this series. Because what if Milwaukee goes in and steamrolls them in 2 games?
I'll feel great. And then we'll lose to Milwaukee, and I'll be
well. That's a different story for a different time, and then we can have an argument there. But
all right, well let's since we're talking about MLB, let's go over some of the lines here, and let's do it on the BetParks app, the one and only sportsbook app I would ever recommend. It's a lot of evers. BetParks and the BetParks sportsbook app and online casino, and they have a great offer, which I'll tell you about. But World Series 2024. Dodgers plus 315, Yankees plus 450, along with the Phillies plus 450. So not the favorites to win it, that's the Dodgers, but certainly not far behind. And then you have the Astros plus 800, Padres plus 1,000. Where are the Mets? Mets plus 2,300. So the betting markets aren't saying that the Mets are making a run and winning the World Series. If you disagree, you bet $100, you would win $2,300 right now. Padres at plus 1,000. Is a pretty sneaky bet. Houston plus 800 is pretty good as well. But that's what you have right there. And as far as the games today, let's take a look at it right now. Tigers at the Astros. Astros minus 143. The Orioles are obviously favorites. This is an interesting one. I actually think if the Mets can win a game today, that can change the series. But a lot of times, that game where like you're still running off adrenaline from the day before is a good game to bet. Mets plus 120 Milwaukee's minus 141, and then maybe bet the Brewers in game 2. And the Padres are significant favorites, minus 165. All right, so there you go. That's on the Bet Parks Sportsbook app right now. But listen, they also offer this, still going on, 50-1 odds boost on your pick to win this year's Pro Football Championship. So all new users who sign up and make the deposit, that's right, 50-1 odds boost. Check it out. BetParks.com has all the terms and conditions. 50-1, you pick the team. It gets to 50-1. And remember, you can do it while you're watching the game. You can do it whenever. You can play blackjack, roulette, or craps with a live dealer right on the BetParks app. This is for a limited time offer. New customers only. All right, and this is for the 50-1 super odds boost. You must be 21 and in PA, New Jersey, Michigan, or Maryland. You play for fun. You love to win. You bet. BetParks. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Rite Aid, you know what's going on. I have 3 children at home that are sick. Not like super duper sick, but sick enough to where I had to go to Rite Aid and I had to get more Motrin, and I'm getting cough drops and I'm getting tissues and I'm getting everything else because that's what you do. And I mean, honestly, I like when I go to the Rite Aid. I spend so much money there, but like I get great deals as well. But I love going to the Rite Aid and getting everything that you need, right? And we're talking about prescriptions now. If you have a bunch of prescriptions, even if you don't, so get a My Pharmacy account at Rite Aid. You can refill your prescription, schedule a vaccine, sign up for prescription notifications, and all you need to get started is a prescription at Rite Aid. So go to riteaid.com/mypharmacy. And you don't have to worry about your prescriptions. They will fill them all for you automatically. Enroll in automatic courtesy refills. Well, you don't have to remember. It automatically gets refilled. It's free and easy. Talk with your Rite Aid pharmacist or sign up through the My Pharmacy account at riteaid.com. Restrictions may apply. Get your prescriptions at the same time with one-trip refills. How about this? Your pharmacy can sync your medication so you pick everything up on one visit. You can do it with your family. Just ask your local Rite Aid pharmacist to get started. And managing your prescriptions with the Rite Aid mobile app. Why would you worry about anything else? Transfer a refill for your prescriptions, enroll in prescription notifications, everything. So, again, riteaid.com/transfer. Rite Aid caring pharmacist ready to answer your questions and help you stay healthy. Get your prescriptions along with anything at Rite Aid that you need, including over-the-counter medicines, household products, cosmetics, and more. Just ask your pharmacy team for details. Restrictions may apply. All right, well, listen, first time talking to this fella on Philly with John Marks. Let's please welcome to the program contributor at PHLY, Les Bowen. What's up, Les?
Hey, John. How are you?
Good. I saw you tweet out that you were actually covering the Pete Rose gambling announcement, I guess, in 1989 for the Philadelphia Daily News. So I'm sure
I was actually a youngish sports writer back then.
Wow. So like me, Les, I was like, my first memories of life were the Phillies winning the World Series and Pete Rose bouncing the ball off the vet turf and everything else. He was an icon to me. But then, later in life, you realize what he really was, what came with it. But you were a professional covering it. What was it like for you learning that he passed away? And what were the emotions that went through you when you saw it?
I was really surprised. There was a story in the Inquirer just the other day about his grandson, who's going to play baseball. LaSalle is reinstating its baseball program. And Pete's grandson is going to play for them. And there was a lot of talk about Pete in the story. And, I don't think there was any. It's not been, I've never seen anything that I think he was still making appearances and stuff like that. So, I was surprised, but also it's a really sad story. And it's a story, Pete, there was a sort of vicious relentlessness to Pete that worked very well on the field, will help you win in a competitive situation, but in other areas of life is less admirable. And he was just a really cold, ruthless person, that summer of '89 was really one of the strangest experiences of my life. I went to court proceedings in Ohio. I went to Reds games. I went and interviewed the bookie, Ron Peters, who was at the center of the case. And then I went to New York and listened to Giamatti, Bart Giamatti, Paul Giamatti's dad, give this long, very eloquent speech banning Pete from baseball. Then Giamatti died like a week later.
Unbelievable.
So I have a lot of memories of that, and it's all very, to this day, it's one of the strangest things. And I've covered some strange things in my life. But yeah, that was really memorable, and I came away with it just thinking what a terrible thing it was to muddle your legacy that well. I mean, let's be clear, he was thrown out for gambling on baseball, not just baseball, but betting for the Reds to lose.
Yeah.
On days when he didn't have the right starting pitcher or something like that. That's no.
Read the Dowd. Les, I know you've read the Dowd report. Read the Dowd report. We're talking about multiple bookies, multiple middlemen. This guy was a degenerate gambler. And you know what, Les? If he comes out and says, I had a gambling problem. I was out of control. I'm getting help for it. He didn't do that. He denied for years and years and years that he did it until a book came out where he made money that he finally admitted it. Right. And up until probably his death, he was a gambler. He was a degenerate gambler.
Yeah, and it's that rush, that high of competition is something that's hard to chase once you become an older person. And I think that was maybe his only way of even toward the end of his playing career. I think one of the real, I don't want to besmirch his baseball legacy at all, his hitting legacy, but I think it's well known within the baseball community that he only broke Ty Cobb's record, which was an unreachable record, because he was the manager of the Reds these last few years.
Right.
And he wrote his name in the lineup every day, at least a year after he was really a good enough hitter to be an everyday baseball player.
He's 45.
He was great until way past 40.
Yeah.
But he wasn't great till like 45.
No, he wasn't.
And it was even in baseball, it was a complicated legacy. There was Ray Fosse, the guy whose career he kind of ruined by nearly killing him in an all-star game.
Right.
It was he was unique, I think, would be one way to put it.
Yep. And we'll wrap it up on this. I don't feel bad for Pete that he didn't make the Hall of Fame. I feel bad for baseball fans because they seem to, what he did on the field, he deserves to be in there. But I'm sorry, you can't take away with him being a manager and even betting on your own team. You can't do it. And the fact that he never owned up to it until many years later, and there was a path for him to get into the Hall of Fame, and he never took it. And Mike Schmidt tried to help him with it. I know a lot of his ex-teammates who loved him tried to help him, but he couldn't get out of his own way. He really couldn't, Les. I mean, he was it. More than one person that played with him and knew him told me that his biggest problem was he was a lot dumber than he thought he was. Not an intelligent person.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I feel bad for Cincinnati and he was like the biggest sports icon of that city, and to have that all turn like it did, it's almost a little bit like it's not a complete analogy, but Bill Cosby in Philly. To have somebody that was like really revered and held up as one of our greatest products and so forth, and then have something really awful come out about him, it's
tragic. It's tragic to us. I actually brought up Bill earlier with how now when he passes away, it's not going to be about the Jell-O Cosby show comedian, huge star. It's going to be about that, as it should be a part of that. But it's sad all around. Before I get to the Eagles stuff, because you said it was one of the more weird things that you covered with Pete Rose. Les, I thought of you yesterday when I was watching the Doug Peterson press conference. And it takes me back to his final year in Philadelphia, where he's being asked about Brett Favre's comments with Nick Foles and Carson Wentz. And he can't answer the question and you say, well, Doug, you're not saying that you agree with Brett Favre and what he had to say. And even then he couldn't say, no, I don't agree with Brett Favre. It took Rob Motti throwing him a lifeline to where he came out and he said, no, of course I don't agree with that. But that was a rough run for Doug, and it seems like he's going through that right now.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on down there in Jacksonville, but again, what kills a coach is when you're brought in to develop a young quarterback and the young quarterback doesn't develop.
Right.
And that's kind of what happened with Carson Wentz in Philly, whether it was Doug's fault or not. And it's what's happening in Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence is off to a horrible start this year. People are making fun of him, and obviously Trevor Lawrence is talented. I think he's shown that. So yeah, Doug's going to get fired unless this turns completely. We are only 4 games into the season, but Jacksonville looks horrible, and Doug's been there a while now, and no.
Going
and I
in
don't
the wrong
know,
direction, Les.
Doug probably doesn't get another head coaching job after this,
Right.
unless he goes back and works as a coordinator somewhere, maybe for Andy again or something. Maybe he doesn't get another. Maybe he's like Spags, and he's just a coordinator from now on or something. But it's not going at all well for Doug, and he's a good guy. And it's a sad thing, but Doug won the Super Bowl here, and he'll always be an icon for that. I never thought he was a genius as a coach. I thought he was a good coach in many ways, but not Andy,
apart.
not Bill Belichick, not somebody on that level.
It fell apart, which is the perfect segue into this year. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about this. It's so weird how the Eagles can't sustain something now.
Right.
With Howie Roseman. They'll have their run. That was 2022. They'll regress in 2023. And now does this year turn into the disaster? We saw it with Doug. And I'm starting to worry that that's the case. And I'm starting to worry that Nick Sirianni is the new Doug Peterson. He's not calling plays. It's not his offense. He's been given the unfortunate task of being the CEO. And so now everybody's examining and microscoping everything that he does because we're not sure what else he does. Les, I worry that the locker room rolls their eyes at him. The message isn't being received. And just that his players don't think that he's the smartest coach. And in the NFL, this is a year-to-year league. Guys don't have guaranteed contracts. If you're on a bad team, you're costing yourself money. And I worry that the players have already tuned him out. You've covered this team for decades. Right. How do you view Nick Sirianni right now, and how does it kind of apply to what you think you're going to see this year?
Well, it's hard for me to really gauge what the players think right now because obviously I'm not down there a lot. But you hear them give testimonials to him. Sometimes that means something. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just what they think they're supposed to say. The thing with Hurts is really you don't sense a close relationship there still, and that's problematic for Nick because as disappointed as people are somewhat with Hurts, I don't think Hurts is going anywhere. So if I were Nick, I'd be working real hard on that. Nick, I don't. I said this to someone else on another podcast. When he showed up, there was that initial press conference that everybody made fun of. I didn't think too much of that. I thought he was just a well-meaning guy who was really young and in his first head coaching job and kind of tripping all over himself. But then when he came out with this stuff about the rock, paper, scissors, where he was gauging competitiveness by how guys responded to playing rock, paper, scissors against him, I was like, really? That's how? Yeah. If I'm a competitive person, I'm going to get upset if I lose to you in rock, paper, scissors. Things like that. But then he went to the Super Bowl. I thought, well, what do I know?
Right.
Hey,
Right.
But I don't know that Nick's a serious person, frankly. He has a vibe and a connection with players because in his heart, I think he's still a player, even though he was never an NFL player. I think he connects generationally with a lot of these guys. He has the strut and all that is kind of emblematic of a lot of his players. But as far as really showing me anything as a strategist, the team is like him, John. It's undisciplined, it's emotional, and it can't get out of its own way. I mean, it's just it's not a well-coached team. There's no way Jeffrey Lurie can look at this and think, well, we've had some injuries, but my team is well coached. We do the right things, and we go into games with a good plan we know what the opposition is going to do for us and all this stuff. No, 0-0-0. They just don't. They come out. They're 23-0 in the first quarter of games this year.
Yeah.
Which you're not looking at the right stuff on the film and getting it across to the players if you can't come out and start a game with anything less than a total disaster.
Yeah, it felt like that Jeffrey Lurie was thinking about moving on from him at the end of last season, but Nick fought for his job. He was willing to concede the offense, bringing in a new offensive coordinator, running a different offense, to where Doug didn't fight for his job and more or less said, oh, well, Press Taylor's my offensive coordinator, we'll be fine. And Jeff got rid of him. The fact that he fought for his job probably was the reason they kept him. It doesn't mean anybody thought that this was actually going to work. I still thought it was going to be a good team. Tim McManus did the piece for ESPN.com back in August, Les, where it detailed the relationship and how it fell apart. And the story ended like this. And when I read the end of the story, I'm like, well, great. Do I think they will go to dinner? And this is talking about Hurts and Nick Sirianni. A team source said this. Do I think they will go to dinner together? Hell no. But it can be a good working relationship, and I don't think it's hatred. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
It's not hatred.
Well,
that's not going to work, Les.
There are relationships. I mean, I don't think Brady and Belichick were ever, dinner buddies, or, Aaron Rodgers has never. Aaron Rodgers thinks he's smarter than every coach he ever had. That can work, but it's not optimal. It really isn't. Especially, there's some things that Jalen Hurts needs to correct. And I'm not sure that he listens to Nick about what he needs to correct. I don't know what the answer. I think the whole Brian Johnson thing, I think just from the outside, Brian Johnson was very close to Jalen. Brian Johnson took the fall for last year's offense. And the other thing the ESPN Tim McManus piece pointed out in very vivid terms was that Brian Johnson wasn't running his concepts, wasn't calling his plays, and apparently all season long was sort of shaking his head over all this, and then got fired. And this is Jalen's guy, So it was a mess. And Jeffrey and Howie are pretty smart people, but I really think they kind of got caught up in, well, how will the rest of the league view this if we fire a coach right after going to the Super Bowl? We already did that once.
Did it with Doug. Yep.
Will other coaches want to come here? Will we get a reputation as, people you can't work for? I really think it's almost like that year, and this was a stupid thing as well, where remember 2011 when the Eagles started out 4-8, they won their last 4 games. Jeffrey has a huge press conference at the end of the season and says, I'm going to give Andy one more chance here.
Yep. Remember they beat four.
Okay, one more chance. He'll win the Super Bowl.
They beat 4 bad quarterbacks at the end of that season, like backup quarterbacks to go 8-8. No, you're right. Yeah. No, Les, it's a great point, because people that weren't here with Doug, if they just look at it like, hang on, he won the Super Bowl, he went back to the playoffs, and then they fired him after a bad year. Yeah, like that was the right move. It's proven to be the right move. And I think if you would have moved on from Sirianni, it would have proven to be the right move. But again, Jeffrey looks like the knee-jerk reaction owner things collapse, fire him. So now you're waiting a year to more or less do what you probably should have done last year. And that's what this year feels like to me.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely true. They can still make this a good season. I mean, I haven't given up on that. I don't think anyone should, but I don't really like the what I'm seeing, and a lot of it is about the defense, frankly. But even though it gets focused on Hurts,
and let's hang on, because I got to thank the diehards out there. Thank you very much, diehards. We appreciate you. We love you. Yeah, so let's talk about the
There's
defense.
people that actually read that stuff that I write on the site. So
I know you do a fantastic job, and you should check out all of Les's contributions here on PHLY. So Vic Fangio was supposed to be the magic elixir, at least for some people out there that thought that, to where this is a talent league. You need more talent. Vic Fangio, of course, should be better than Matt Patricia or should be better than Sean Desai, but you're still running that same defense. And if you don't have the personnel, then you're not going to be great. I just don't know how you go from having such a great effort and such a great performance against the Saints, and then you come back and you play right into their hands. You play off of the receivers. They're just dinking and dunking you to death. Just like in that game against Derek Carr when he was the Raiders, where they just killed you by a 1,000 paper cuts. You don't adjust to it, and they can't tackle. So what do you think other offenses are going to do to you? This defense and Vic Fangio, what a brutal, pathetic performance last week against the Bucs. Just really, really bad.
And it was every bit as bad 2 weeks earlier, when Atlanta, I was really on this after the Atlanta game, and more than I was on Hurts. And people were faulting me for, they only scored 22 points. Atlanta had the ball for 24 minutes and scored 22 points. They can't play nickel. Nickel is like kryptonite to them. They're Superman if they can load up the box. Suddenly they're a great team if the other team doesn't use three wideouts. But everybody sees that now. And so guess what they're not going to see is a team that doesn't use three wideouts. Why you can't play, why your entire front is paralyzed by having to play 4 down instead of 5, I have no idea. A lot of flack on social media for faulting Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis because Baker Mayfield was getting the ball out very quickly Sunday. But do you have to just disappear if the quarterback is getting the ball out? Can you put your hands up? Can you tackle a running back? You're facing the 29th best running offense in the NFL, and they average 5 yards a carry.
Yeah.
Just because the quarterback's getting the ball out, you just have to just stand there and look around all the time. I don't see that. And the secondary, they've made vast improvements in the talent of the secondary in the offseason. And that is not being reflected in their play at all. They play this incredibly soft zone. Part of the tackling problem is nobody's close to the receiver when he catches the ball. So there's plenty of space for the guy to maneuver and juke and feint. It's like that Avonte Maddox missed tackle that everybody has seen 1,000 times. It was a horrible miss, but he's coming all the way across the formation. They snap the ball and he goes flying at the guy.
Yeah.
That's not sound. No, that should not be the way he was lined up there. It's a mess, and I don't understand why I don't understand why you can't play press coverage with these corners, and why you wouldn't want to.
Yeah, well, we'll have to talk again soon after we get some more games here because there's
I would like that.
There's plenty to talk about here. Follow Les on social media as well. Very active, Les Bowen is on
more
on
than
Twitter.
I should be, really.
It's all right. No, it's good content. I see your tweets and I'm like, that's a good idea. That's something good that he said. So follow Les, and of course, when are there specific days that you're putting stuff out on the website, or is
I try to write off the coordinators every week, and I'll be doing that today. I guess they are going to have the coordinators today in the bye week, so I should be able to write something today. And and then with it being the bye, I'm not sure what's up after that for a while.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll look for you, Les. I appreciate you jumping on, man. Good to see you.
Thank you, John.
All right, there he is, Les Bowen. Love Les. He's the best. And PHLY Daily, I mean, talk about other stuff that we do. Yeah, I mean, it's like, just go to the website and PHLY Daily. Rich Hoffman Jr. sends you everything you need to know. Is Rich going he's not going to the Bahamas, is he?
I don't know. I think everybody's going, right? You and I are going.
I'm not.
I heard we're going.
We're not.
Yeah,
the Sixers,
I heard we're going.
Sixers training camps in the Atlantis in the Bahamas, and yeah, the Sixers guys are going.
Listen, I heard Bahamas, and I tried to weasel my way in there.
Spring training next year? Super Bowl?
I would imagine we're going to spring training.
I want to get
Super Bowl.
Yeah.
To cover what? The Lions?
Well, they were out there last year, no?
Yeah, I guess they were. That's true.
But it's in New Orleans, and I don't like New Orleans. Army Navy, Radio Row? Army Navy?
Sure, why not?
It's in Washington this year, which is not fun.
Nah, I assume it's a FedEx?
Yes,
That's
I think
a
so.
dump.
Yep. It's in San Francisco, maybe the following year or a year after that. It's not back in Philly for a long time, which is really, really, really depressing.
I think it's really cool having it here.
Oh, my God. It's one of the, if you've never been to an Army-Navy game, you don't need to know anything about the teams or anything. It is one of the best sporting events you'll ever go to.
So I always love watching it because it's one of the few games on that day. And it's one of those games, I don't know if you recognize it or feel this way, but I always feel like it's like 12 degrees the day that Army-Navy play.
Because it has snowed.
It snows, and it's just a really cool atmosphere.
I've been at a game where I remember I was doing shots off an ice luge, and it was so cold that day. Yeah, it was so cold that day. It was awesome. When it comes back to Philly, I don't even know what year. A number of years from now.
Army-Navy, outside of the fact that it's this storied, traditional game, which is cool in and of itself, like, if you're not a fan of college football, because let's be honest, college football sometimes can run, 3.5 hours. There's some long games in college football.
Right.
You don't have to worry about that with Army-Navy. They're just chewing clock. Triple option the whole
Navy's
way.
doing a lot of running. I guess Army runs a lot now as well. They just busted Temple.
Yeah, they're both historically triple option teams, right? So, like, the clock's going to keep moving. You'll be in and out of there in 2 hours.
It's a great game.
It's an awesome game.
All right, we're back tomorrow. Everybody live at 8 a.m. Again, make sure you're following PHLY on YouTube and on social medias. You got to smash that subscribe button and the likes. We need more likes and comments on our YouTubes. Like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate all our chatters there to keep us company during the show here, watching the show live. You can always watch it whenever you want to. It's available on demand. Just click the link. Available on Roku TV. Live, and then it's replayed as all of our content is, so you can watch it if you have Roku TV. Just check your listings. And it's available via podcast form, as Tyler's probably getting that together right now. Wherever you get your favorite podcast, just search Philly with John Marks or search PHLY Sports, and you can listen and subscribe to that as well. And check me out on social media. We're back tomorrow. Everybody have a great one. See you.
We all silly like the mayor.